Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you very much for watching Ethics and Logics of International Collaborative Projects. My name is Hideo Tone, Program Officer of the Toyota Foundation. I'm going to be your MC for today's session. This year, we are streaming a series of discussions on cross-border collaborations from August, and this is the fourth and final session. Our international grant program is supporting the projects that are working on shared issues or common challenges in Asia. And we take the approach to support mutual exchanges to push for the collaboration beyond sectors and borders in East and Southeast Asia. Today, we're going to focus on developing the capability to manage such collaborations. We will hear the cases of cross-border and cross-sector collaborations and discuss how to make it happen and what is needed for it. Because we believe collaboration is one of the most important keys to improving the situation, but we need someone to make it possible. So it's a kind of chicken and egg issue. Although we are supporting such collaborative projects through grants, firstly, we need to find key persons. They might be called facilitators or intermediaries or maybe connectors, but who are they? How can we find them? How can they become such professionals as a facilitator or connectors? Then here today, we invited 4 speakers from our 2 granted projects from different parts of Asia. So let me briefly introduce them before starting the discussion. First is Pham Kyo Wan, founder and CEO of the Center for Social Initiatives Promotion. She's from Hanoi. Hi, Wan. And Sunit Shrestha, founder and managing director of Change Fusion. He's based in Bangkok.
Hello.
Hi. And Ken Ito, director of East Asia of Asian Venture Philanthropy Network. He's based in Tokyo.
よろしくお願いします。
And Patian Lo, chief of staff of Avpn as well. And she's from Singapore. And we are joined by Professor Shigeto Sonoda of the University of Tokyo. And he's the chair of our selection committee so he's a commentator and the moderator for today's discussion.
よろしくお願いします。
So in the first part of today's session, we're going to hear 2 presentations. And after each presentation, we have comments from Sonoda-san. And then we will have time to discuss some points on today's topic so that we will be able to dig in deeper on the importance of a collaboration and the roles of intermediaries for it or something like that. And before ending the session, we will secure some time to take some time to maybe 10 to 15 minutes to take a few questions from the audience. So please do not hesitate to make any comments or questions anytime. Just use the chat box on YouTube. And on your questions, please indicate who the question is to. And we already have some questions. So we are afraid that we might not be able to pick all of the questions due to time constraints. And I guess we're going to running short of time actually. So let's get started. The first one is Wan and Sunit. So they have collaborated on the projects of ecotourism involving a lot of stakeholders between Thailand and Vietnam. So Wan and Sunit, please unmute and start your presentation, and please introduce yourself in the beginning. Thank you. Mic is yours.
Good morning. I hope that you can hear me. So my name is Oanh Pham. I'm come from Vietnam. So today, together with Sunit from the Chain Fusion, I would like to share some thought about how we collaborate in the wonderful project. The title of project is Making Tourism Works for the Local Communities. Yes, so that's back a little bit about the CSIP. I would like to introduce you about the CSIP. CSIP is a local organization that our mission is to promote and support for social enterprise in our country. So in our work, we support a lot of social enterprise in working in tourism, in ecotourism, sustainable tourism, and more important for us, so tourism is one of the very powerful tool to reduce poverty and to connect the people in very remote area to the mainstream development of our program. So in 2019, together with Chain Fusion, we received generous support from the Toyota Foundation to run a project, the Making Tourism Work for the local community. So I introduce my colleagues from Thailand. Sunit, you want to introduce about yourself, Sunit?
Hi, I'm Sunit from Change Fusion in Thailand. We are doing almost exactly like CSIP, but in Thailand. So we support social entrepreneurs. We also work on growing the social investment landscape a little bit in Thailand. So we also invest in some of the social enterprise, and few of them are linked to sustainable tourism, especially community-based tourism. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, so as you see that we come from two countries, but Chain Fusion and CSIP have one very common interest is about to support the social enterprise in the tourism industry. So because as you see that Vietnam and Thailand is both very rich in the culture, and we have a beautiful landscape, but the mainstream tourism couldn't make our local community become richer or happier. Instead, it's somehow to destroy the local community culture, and also a kind of new exploitation. So Chain Fusion and CSIP want to promote the sustainable and ecotourism by empowering Vietnam and Thailand community-based tourism practitioners through sharing good practice, creating a learning platform on capacity building and market access. The lesson learned from the cross-nation learning process will help us to advocate stakeholders, including policymakers, for a better development of community-based tourism in the two countries. So that is about the objective of our project. So with that objective, we engage a number of the partners from the both countries to join our project. As you see that we, as a Chain Fusion and also for the CSIP, we are very much focusing on nurturing the practitioner. It means the social enterprise working in the CBT industry. So in this project, from both sides, Vietnam and Thailand, we engage a lot of the CBT practitioners in our project. We want to engage them in the regional market to build the capacity and also to create an opportunity for them to communicate and collaborate with other stakeholders like private sector. So in that project from Vietnam side, we also invite some private tourist company to come not only to in terms of to provide support, but also to build a mutual understanding between the private company and our very practitioner CBT practitioner at a community level. We also engage in this project, as you see that we engage quite a lot of different stakeholders in our project. So including the the grassroots CBT practitioner from the mountainous area in Lao Cai and Hoa Binh province. As they are the focus and major target of our project. And we also engage the private sector and academic institution that to also to enhance our lesson learned and also to build capacity for the practitioner. So as I mentioned earlier, that through the lesson learned from the CBT development in the two countries, we want to advocate for the policymaker. So we also engage people council in the two provinces that we are working with, in Lào Cai and Hòa Bình province, and also the Vietnam tourism administration is a it's a very important guy. Okay, so that is from the Vietnam side. How about Sunit, who has a partner in the project?
The partners in Thailand are basically us and also the social enterprise I mentioned called Local Alike. Right now, Local Alike is a social enterprise that works on sustainable community tourism. So they now work with almost 150 communities, I think now, across Thailand. To help them build capacity for tourism, but also to make sure that they can manage it sustainably, in terms of how to create a share values or share benefits, plans in the community, how to reinvest the proceeds into the community development, and also how to lay different ground rules in the community for community tourism, so that the activities are sustainable and not in Thailand. Many communities that got suddenly famous, sometimes within very quick years, the whole thing kind of got destroyed by over tourism, for example. So we bring them together, and of course in Thailand there are different government bodies like the Thai tourism authorities, and also many of the community enterprise that focus on community tourism in different areas in Thailand, but they actually don't have local. So thank you. Next slide. One can continue on activity, I think.
Yep, thank you. So in order to achieve our objective, we ran a number of very intensive activity in the last 2 years. So we started with a CBT exchange visit between Vietnam and Thailand, in which we bring a group of the stakeholders from Vietnam to Thailand first, and then to welcome the people from Thailand to Vietnam. So in each country, we visit about 3 different locations of the CBT to have a diverse interaction with community. And based on that, the academic from the two countries develops the best CBT practice in Vietnam and Thailand. So in total, we have 2 case studies in Vietnam and 2 in Thailand was developed. So one of our result is that we jointly develop a CBT guideline for the Thailand and Vietnam. So based on what is strength that from both countries, and we think that what is the market needed. So we build a guideline to help them to develop their to have the practitioner to better develop the CBT. Yes, and we also provide some training for the CBT for the practitioner based on the guideline we develop. We have people to connect online and to build a protocol to step by step to guide the practitioner to how to access to regional online tourist market. Is a very, very practical protocol we develop, and it we also to have a cross-nation cross-conference to connect all the stakeholders together, and they share what they reflection, what they learn, and also to recommendation for the policymaker to how the government and private sector can help the CBT practitioner to develop their work, to do the work better. Yeah. So so that is about activity. Next slide, please. Yes, I also mentioned about the key result of our project. As you see that through the COVID, but Chain Fusion and CSIP managed to complete all the activities that we promised, and we have some products, something that we can be very proud of, and also we can use their own of the lesson learned that we document in the case study, in the protocol, in the guideline for the future intervention of our work in the for the tourism company as well. Yes, and I think that yeah, the result of the project is quite successful, and thanks for the support. The next slide, please. Yeah, so the project is started in 2019, and after the first year, for the second half of the project, we was hit by COVID-19. So a lot of activity was a little bit suspended and delay, and we have to change the way we are working. But also the more important that the situation in the community also changed a lot. So because of the social distancing, the market is closed, all of the border is closed. So our people working in the community is getting very, very tough time. So for that, as a second part of the project, the Chain Fusion and CSIP also managed to try to continue our support to their tourists, to the social enterprise in the community, and also to try to to help them to come up with the new product for their to help them to continue their business. In Vietnam, we run a number of the initiatives to help them to implement the safety, hygiene, and sanitation measurement to make sure that the people in community was well protected, but also as a so when the community is open for tourism, they are they're ready to receive the tourism anytime that when the government is allowed. I think that Sunit can share more about about some initiative from the Thailand and Vietnam in terms of the designing the new product, and also to prepare for the reopen of the tourism.
I think in Thailand and Vietnam, we were hit very badly because of the COVID, especially on tourism. But it also allowed the community to reflect back a little bit on what they actually really want from these tourism programs that they are running. And also they have to shift into a learning mode very quickly, especially on how to make it like a safe travel. And by the time the COVID-19 kind of like go down a little bit, I think there was a kind of a boom in both Thailand and Vietnam on local tourism market. And since many tourists cannot go outside, so they have to travel within the countries. And I think sustainable community-based tourism provide a very unique opportunities for the local travelers to do more meaningful and also more sustainable traveling. And I think some of these communities receive a lot of benefits from that. But also, I think in Thailand, for example, they were able to adapt to the situation whereby, instead of just selling the tourism service, they also turn around and try to sell the products instead, like different community products. Actually, they got a lot of inspired by Japanese examples whereby, different products in a very small communities on the travels area, are kind of famous, so that they can be sold outside of the community as well. So I think that is something they are trying to learn, and beyond that, they even try to come up with like a local community food, but partner with chef, like chef in Bangkok or in big city to do like a chef table using like a community-based ingredients or like a Hill tribes type thing, so that you cannot go travel to the community, but community experience can still come to you in the city, for example. So that's something they have been pushing and changing. Thank you. So back to One.
Yeah, thank you, Sunit. Wow, so together we somehow help the community to overcome their their very very strong effect from the COVID-19 by many different initiatives that, as Sunit has mentioned. So the lesson learned from this project is a cross-nation collaboration project. So we learn from both the similarity and also differences between the way we do our business in the both country. So in terms of the community participation, in both countries, we engage the people, the community, but in quite maybe different way. Why in Thailand, the practitioner come together and very structured in the, they manage very well in the community management team. So why in Vietnam, the situation is a little bit more immature. So with a lot of practitioners working by themselves as a very micro business by themselves rather than come together as a coherent community. So we learn a lot from Thailand experience in how to organize and manage the community work. But in terms of the product development, the Vietnam side is have they are very private, market driven, and because they target the traveler, the world traveler, not the domestic or corporate. So they quite well respond to their in terms of the quality of the service. While the government policy in both two countries is quite different. Why in Thailand, I think that the government somehow have some direct support for the CBT, but in Vietnam, the still that is quite difficult because the still mainstreaming tourism is a dominate in many areas that we are working in. So so both lesson learned, we learn a lot from each others. I think that our counterpart in Thailand and Vietnam, they have a chance to share and to see different perspective for how they can support for the practitioner, for the people in the community to do better sustainable and eco tourism. In this whole process, the role of the Chin Fusion and CSIP is to try to build collaboration between different stakeholders. As I mentioned earlier, that we very much focus on social enterprise and the community practitioner. But we also see that because most of them working in very remote and underdeveloped area. So that's why even they are the potential enormous, but they need to be unlocked. And the role of the organization like CSIP or the Chin Fusion is quite important to have the local community in both term of the capacity building, but also to connect with the private sector, with other social enterprise like the local allies in Thailand or the Sapa Uchau in Vietnam. So when we engage more developed social enterprise who are providing service to the community, I think we fill the gap between the local community development with the bigger market. And we also to engage and to advocate for the policymaker and other stakeholders to try us to recognize the different, also the challenge and also the advantage of doing the ecotourism, sustainable tourism, and manage it them by a social enterprise. So with the hope that our government will recognize and provide support to strengthen the social enterprise working in the ecotourism. Over to so Sunit, you want to have some more lesson learned from that?
Yeah, so I think in the interest of time, I think we kind of already run over our own time, but just quickly on or our team most important lesson also is about managing mutual expectation and cross-cultural differences. because in international collaboration, say it's like, you know, community collaboration, there's like 10 things that can go wrong. National collaboration, maybe 100 things can go wrong. Global collaboration or international collaboration is like 1,000 things that can go either wrong or not quite what other people expect they would do. So I think it's really important to set a very clear expectation from each other on the collaboration, what is expected, and set a kind of a clear or at least frequent communication channel, so that people can check in and updates and recalibrate their progress and expectation, and prepare for things that would arise because of the different in culture. You know, Thailand and Vietnam, Southeast Asian country people, but our habits are very, very different also, you know, like the way we handle times and even food or expectation, you know. So in collaboration, small thing that sounds not very important in one culture might be very important in other culture. We also, in the process, we're engaging with different other partners, you know, in other countries also, like some Japanese group and different people to try to leverage this project to the most benefits. And of course, everyone come in with completely different background. So we cannot assume that all the cultures are the same. So I think the most important thing then is actually to have a very open mind, and you know, realize that we cannot control many things, especially sometimes the COVID suddenly hits or the flight cancel and or something like that. So and when this problem happen, how do we seize the moment and use this challenge or problem as a new opportunity? You know, like COVID is a bad thing, but then it's a boon for maybe a local tourism programs, or it can kind of quickly get community to focus on health outcome, or like the cleanliness and the healthy bits of the community tourism that used to be quite a problem in many areas, for example. So I think that is what we are learning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So next slide, please. Yeah, so as Sunit mentioned that that's the last day I want to my message to the people here. You know, we in the collaboration, we're facing a lot of challenge, like in the value, in the market, we're working approach the language and the accident like the COVID-19 as well. So the way to move it forward is we try to adapt and also to be very authentic about ourselves, but very important that we respect our partner, our collaborator, and to keep the collaboration, and also to engage support for our own other people to make it happen. So thank you very much for the Toyota Foundation and for Tonesan and the other colleagues in the Toyota Foundation for the whole process to help us to make the project happen. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Owan, and thank you, Sunit. Sonoda-san, would you give us some comments, please?
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Owan-san and Sweet-san, for your presentation. I should say that every year we read about 140 applications from a variety of applicants. But roughly speaking, there are two types of applications are there. The one that, one type is that the one that, which the proposer themselves try to organize or try to serve as a connector or mediator among different stakeholders. But the other type of the project is that the proposer is trying to ask someone or help someone to organize. So in that sense, but these two types have different functions or structures in a broad sense of the word. And today's, especially the first case is very typical case of the latter one. Of course, the product managers are being deeply involved in the management of the so-called community-based tourism. But basically, those community leaders or who are promoting, community building, community-based tourism that are promoting their activities. I have, two questions basically. One is a rather broader question, which I expect to be answered in the question and answer session. The first question is whether you have any concrete ideas or models to be applied to the case of Vietnam and Thailand when it comes to the community-based tourism. In many cases, model cannot be easily applied to every case because every case is very unique. So I want to hear your experiences, how you modify or adjust to the circumstances by if you have any concrete ideas about the models that you try to utilize in terms of the creation of new type of community-based tourism. And the second question is more addressed to the those who are involved in the project. Community-based tourism seems to be very fascinating concept, but unless you have a good community leaders who might have continuous efforts to make the attempts work, they should have enough capability or willingness to do their own project. My question, the second question, is that what sort of efforts you are making to make the committee leaders create or build their capacities? Do you have any concrete programs, or do you have any unspoken programs that you are utilizing so that you will make the committee leaders more continuously aware of what they have to do? Thank you.
Thank you, Sonoda-san. So let's take those questions in the later part of today's session and in the discussion part. Okay, so from now on, maybe we could go to the second speakers, Ito-san and Patien. So their project is Avpn Policy Leadership Lab, which is actually in progress, not finished yet. And the project is promoting cross-sector collaboration, cross-border collaboration on social investment, inviting policymakers or leaders of public-private projects from Southeast Asian countries mainly. So Ito-san, Patien, please unmute and start your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sone-san. And let me introduce myself. My name is Ken Ito. I'm an East Asia Director of Avpn. And really appreciate this opportunity, Toyota Foundation's grant to our program, as well as this today's session to share our learnings. We will be presenting a project by both myself and the Patien Lo, the director of the policy programs. And the shall we go into the slide? So let me introduce Avpn and what we do. Avpn is a non-profit organization founded in Singapore in 2012. And as you can see from this title slide, our mission is to build a community of the social investors and also related stakeholders in Asia. Could you turn to the next page, please? So it's kind of difficult to explain that what we do in the different programs, because we have 60 employees, 70 employees in 14 different economies in Asia. And we are headquartered in Singapore. And we are the platform organization of different stakeholders who would like to promote the social investment and strategic philanthropy in Asia. So as you can see from this page, these are all diverse, different stakeholders, players in this field. So as you can see, the maybe Toyota Foundation as an example, Toyota Foundation is obviously the key player in the foundation sector in Japan. And their grant program also include not only making a grant to the grassroots organization, but also building an infrastructure like ourselves. And you can see also different logos on this page. So the corporate sectors are also engaging in this movement. Some of the financial institutions or banks are involved in the developing the new like systems or new frameworks to accelerate the social investment. Also, you can see different intermediaries.
I'd like to further reinforce what Ito-san had just mentioned, which is that the project, the Avpn Policy Lab, is a unique collaborative opportunity because we are looking at the opportunity of not only learning and exchange across countries, we are also looking at the opportunity for learning and exchange across sectors. The Policy Lab specifically is an opportunity for us to see how the private sector capital providers, government representatives, and agencies involved in rolling out policy programs, as well as civil society organizations may find the opportunity to work together. And Avpn as a network of members that provide different kinds of resources will also see that they have a role to play to advance collaborations of this kind. So let me just very briefly introduce what is the Avpn Regional Policy Leadership Lab. So it is a program that has been running with Avpn actually since 2017. And we are very excited this year that we have the opportunity to partner with the Toyota Foundation for this year's program. The program is in effect a 12-month-long fellowship for a highly selective group of policymakers and influencers in policy programs. And we want to support them to cultivate relationships with key private and social sector stakeholders that leverage Avpn's network with social investments. We do this through facilitating small group consultations with each fellow to create opportunities for practitioner-oriented knowledge exchange, capacity building, and networking. Each of the small group consultations will focus on a policy program or an initiative that the fellow is seeking to scale up in their own markets. And we're very excited that this Policy Leadership Lab this year was selected to be part of the P3 Impact Accelerator program by Concordia, which is a leadership institute that is based in the United States. And this accelerator program seeks to work with organizations to advance public, private, and people sector collaboration. The goals of this program is to provide 4 things to the policy and social investment sector. Firstly, it wants to provide access to networks so that policymakers and policy programmers are able to receive peer support and other connections that will advance their collaboration opportunity in the future. Second, we want to build the capacity of the policy sector and the social investment sector to gain best practices and insights from each other. Thirdly, we want to encourage the advancement and championing of social investment. Social investment is the movement of financial and non-financial resources towards social impact. And the more advocates and supporters that we have of such kind of movement in policy and in social investment sector, then there's more opportunities we have to see more resources to go to very important development areas in Asia. And then last but not least, we want to profile and share more about the active policymakers who are already taking steps to advance cross-sector and cross-border collaboration. So I will not take too much time to go into too much detail about the individual projects for our policy fellows because they are very detailed and very ambitious. But I will very quickly just introduce that this year in our cohort with the support of the Toyota Foundation, we have 8 fellows in the Policy Lab representing 3 countries, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Thailand. We have 3 policy fellows from Indonesia. They come from very different parts of government, ranging from the Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs to the Ministry of Villages and Cooperatives, and also the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. From Thailand, we have very interesting policy fellows that represent the Thai National Innovation Agency, the Thai Securities and Exchange Commission, and also a very strong civil society leader that is currently working on Thai government programs in mental health and community healthcare. And then lastly, two fellows from the Philippines. One actually represents a very interesting stakeholder in the government landscape, which is a leader of the provincial government. She represents the province of Leyte in the Philippines. And we also have lastly a fellow from the World Bank's programs in the Philippines that is currently working on government initiatives to reduce disaster risk. So I wanted to share this high profile of the fellows with everyone, so you have a sense of the diversity of the policy representatives we are speaking to. And we also have started with the program, as Done-san earlier on mentioned. We are midway through the program today. So up until this time, we have already worked with half of the fellowship in their small group consultations. And we have already engaged 10 different other markets in Asia in interacting with these policymakers across 3 markets. And we have also already put half of the fellows, which is 4 fellows, in touch with 21 different member organizations in Avpn that represent the organizations in both the public and private sectors. So I will just very quickly share with you some of the high-level topics that our policy fellows are looking to engage in, and also give you a view into the kind of partners that the Avpn program is currently bringing to connect with and exchange with these policy fellows. You can see that the majority of the partners that are on this slide actually represent private as well as philanthropic sector organizations. And they may not be necessary partners that these policy fellows previously would have access to. And so we're really excited to see what type of opportunity these kinds of connections can bring. So just very quickly, you can see that among our policy fellows in Thailand, between the Secretary General Rinvadi of the Securities Exchange and Commission in Thailand, and also Kun Pien Chanan from Thailand, we are working with them on advancing the ESG landscape, as well as nurturing women leaders in finance, and building capacity for scale in the mental health programs in Thailand as well. In the Philippines, we are exploring topics like building inclusive business models that will support livelihoods in the creative economy. This is the project that our fellow from the province of Leyte, Ms. Ana Veloso Tuazon, is looking at. And very related to the creative economy and livelihoods is the project with policy fellow Leslie Jean Cordero, which is looking to engage private sectors and businesses in disaster resilience. Next slide, please. With our fellows in Indonesia, we have also very interesting but quite interrelated projects as well. With our fellow from the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, she is looking to look at how corporate stakeholders can support the growth of inclusive business with the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. The fellow from the Ministry of Villages and Cooperatives wants to look at how private investors can be more motivated and to make investments and scale up climate smart solutions in rural and underserved areas in Indonesia. And then lastly, with the fellow from the Ministry for Economic Affairs, we are looking at how businesses can partner with governments to support rural entrepreneurship. Very interesting and interrelated topics across the 3 fellows. And again, you can see from some of the partners that we are connecting them to below on this slide, they represent a good mix of private and philanthropic as well as civil society organizations. Next slide, please. I'd like to spend the last few minutes to quickly share with you some of our learnings about what it takes for us to grow collaboration opportunities. And I'd like to talk about our lessons learned about this from two perspectives. The first perspective is what kind of ecosystem factors should be present in order to encourage more collaboration in deploying capital. Avpn, as Ito-san introduced earlier, is a network of organizations that move capital towards impact. And while we are delighted to have the opportunity to work with policymakers to make that possible, it is important for us to identify what kind of factors must be present and what type of tools need to be present in order for social investors and policymakers to work more closely together. One opportunity we see is that it is important for social investors and policymakers to look at the opportunity to leverage innovative financing models. This is an opportunity for collaboration to really bring impact to the next level, because together, if we can identify innovative ways that government and private financing can flow to some of the critical development areas, then there is an opportunity where the collaboration will lead to greater impact. So when we explore instruments like pooled funds or other forms of customized funding vehicles, we have the opportunity to bring both social investors and policymakers in collaboration to support more resources towards these critical areas. The second important element is that there has to be a commitment towards driving capacity building in this region. Whether it is a policymaker or whether it is a social investor, all of us need to learn how to work with each other. And the capacity building programs are a very critical part of what we think will help bring success towards collaboration opportunities in this region. Next slide, please. The second perspective I wanted to bring comes from some lessons that we have learned specifically from the Policy Lab program so far. As you know, we are still midway through this program, so I'm sure there will be more lessons that we will be learning. But allow me to share at this time what are some of our observations already about programs that try to bring across cross-sector and cross-border capacity building and knowledge exchange. For Avpn ourselves, as an organizing party, we have learned that it is really important for us to put in the time and the preparation to design the kinds of consultations between policy fellows and the social investors in a very intentional and comprehensive manner. Our team members spend a significant amount of time to do the research and to have interviews and conversations with all stakeholders in advance so that we are able to design the consultations to bring fruitful outcomes for all parties. In order to do this, we do need to find the right talent and skills to make such kinds of designs possible. And this is a ongoing challenge, I think, that is facing the sector. And we'll have an opportunity, I think, to talk about this later on. The third lesson that we learned is that many policymakers and social investors, as well as Avpn, come into this program with some assumptions about what we think the other partner is thinking. And so when we have an opportunity to test these assumptions, we often realize that many of them are actually not true. So it is important for us in Avpn as an organizing party to avoid having too many preconceived notions or assumptions about our work. Lastly, we have to learn to manage the unexpected. As our friends from Vietnam and Thailand shared earlier, COVID has made the environment quite unpredictable. And since many of our policy programmers are actually based in government, the government's priorities are also changing in an unexpected way. So we have to be agile and flexible to respond to any changes that come up. For our policy fellows and our members who are engaging with this program, we also see that they have learned some very important lessons. They have learned that they need to also be properly motivated and have the right perspectives when they come into this program. The opportunity to be interacting with some of these policy fellows, many of which hold senior positions in government, can sometimes give rise to perhaps inappropriate motivations for some organizations or individuals to want to participate. And so it's important for us to make sure that we are bringing people with the right motivation and the common goals with these policymakers in order to have effective consultation and knowledge exchange. They, of course, have to be available and ready to have this conversation, which is difficult to predict until we are able to have had some time to prepare with the fellows and the member experts. We also have to make sure that there is alignment of sectors and objective focus. What we mean by this is that it is very easy to assume that because a policy fellow is working on a tourism project, that the private sector partner that should be talking to them is a tourism partner, tourism industry partner. However, we may have an opportunity, for example, if the goal of the policy project is to improve livelihoods and digital transformation of the rural tourism economy, that we may even be able to bring in organizations that are in the digital sector or who could be working on entrepreneurship that will be also good partners to speak with, even though they may not historically have been in the tourism sector. And background conditions are always very important, as I mentioned earlier, about the risk of COVID causing unexpected changes. And the last point I wanted to make here is that in order for us to continue nurturing these kinds of exchanges, we are hopeful that we will continue to find common learning points. We will need to continue to align not only on objectives, but also the country and cultural context from which these policy fellows and Avpn members are coming from, so that we can build a two-way street of exchange. It is not only a case where policymakers are just asking questions and our Avpn members are giving answers. We also want to see that Avpn members can ask questions of our policymakers and have them share their perspective about the work that they're doing with Avpn members as well. And ultimately, that is the benefit of having neutral platforms, because Avpn as a network can provide a neutral and objective way for cross-sector and cross-border learning and exchange to happen. This is the end of my sharing with you today, and I look forward to having a further discussion and also continuing exchange of the Policy Lab program with everyone. I will hand this back now to Ito-san for his concluding remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to add some examples in the as a closing of what we do. Maybe some people have like a difficulty to get what actual exchange will be resulted in what type of impact. If we take some example of how policy affect the social change, the other topic is ecotourism. So when I did exchange in the ecotourism sector in the Southeast Asia and Japan, and actually these visitors outside Japan found that something unique about our social system, which we are not fully aware of. So that one of the system was the Michinoeki. It's a kind of how to say the small shops of the selling local products, and which is nicely located on alongside of this national laws and that. And this is very common, and we have such policy since 90s. And but for the business from outside Japan, seems like this is very nice way to combine the local resources with the power of tourism to revitalize the local economy. And this is kind of the guideline with the central ministry and the local governments are following that direction. And we have now more than 1,000 such locations nationwide. And if we talk about social investment, maybe everybody knows about dormant account fund, the Kyumin Kozakikin. And that was actually started in UK and followed by some Korean government. And many of the different governments are discussing how they can adapt that model in the like a different environment. So we are promoting this type of exchange that we can replicate that some of the essence that invented by some other the people in other countries. And we are trying to facilitate that communication to identify what is the best practice they might need to refer to. And also we make actual like contacts and connections that they can talk more concrete potential project formulation. So that's what we do. Thank you very much for your attention.
Sonoda-san, could we have your comments for their project, please?
Yes, thank you very much for your sophisticated presentation on what you're doing. And I do agree that about the kind of importance of management of the unexpected, which we should share at the time of this live streaming video as well. I think to me that the expertise, experts in the Avpn knows very well about the kind of condition in which they are in, and that's why they could point out so many points that we should share at the time of designing as well as carrying out the program that we design. I have one question basically two questions to the Avpn people. One is I do think that the selection of so-called policy fellows is of vital importance in order to substantialize what you have in mind in the form of policy making. But my question is what sort of conditions you have in mind at the time of recruiting or selecting them? I understand that you spend a lot of time and efforts to make a kind of matching between those selected and the kind of concrete activities that the program is supposed to do. But before that, what sort of conditions you had at the time of approaching to different kind of policy makers or potential policy makers, and what aspect you are monitoring most? It might. I'm afraid my question has to do might be touching upon your confidential issues, but I'd like to hear your frank opinions about this. And the second questions are kind of a half question, half comments is that I know that many policy Patience mentioned about the kind of policy shift before and after a new government has been launched. But at the same time, at the regular level, policymakers can easily shift their positions. So those who show their interest in promoting, the particular issues might be changing their mindset after a move, after they're taking the new position, which is very, commonly observed, especially the bureaucrats in a much bigger organization. But I want to hear how you chase those former policy, policy fellows. I want to chase them after they are taking different position in the governmental sector, or what aspect do you are reflecting at the time of evaluating the effect of the program? Because if everyone left, it's really it seemed to me that it's really difficult to evaluate the effect of your program. But I wonder what sort of devices you are utilizing, what sort of tools you are using to evaluate the effect of the a program that you are carrying out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonoda Sensei. Those are very, very good questions. I will.
Sorry, Patience. Sorry. Maybe. Yeah, it's nice to if you could answer it right now. But let me because we will have a discussion for maybe 20 minutes from now on. So maybe maybe let's start with your answers to Sonoda-san, and then let's switch to Juan and Sunit that some questions already raised from Sonoda-san. So yeah, please start from your side, Patience. And later, Juan, could you take over, Patience, to answer the questions, or if you need some recap, or if you need some question again from Sonoda-san, please us know. So yeah, Patchen, could you start?
Of course. Thank you so much. I wanted to first of all acknowledge that those are very real questions. I will try to respond at a programmatic level, and happy for Ito-san to also add any other comments as well. On the question about the selection of fellows, it is indeed not easy to identify the appropriate position or profile of a policy fellow that will get the greatest benefit from this program. We have learned from the last few years of running this program that there are a few factors to take into account. One is the level of seniority of the policy fellow. If the policy fellow is too senior in the government, there is a risk that he or she may not have the time or the attention span in order to devote to what this program would require. But on the other hand, if he or she was too operational or programmatic in the policy agency that they're in, they may not have the authority or the empowerment to implement what benefits they may gather from this program into their work. So we have learned that typically the most suitable and most effective stage of seniority is somebody that is perhaps a director of an agency, or maybe at most one or two ranks below that, and or somebody who is directly leading programs within a ministry, but not, for example, somebody that is at the level of a junior minister or a minister himself or herself. So it is not a science. Sometimes we have the very lucky and fortunate instance of somebody who is very, very senior, but yet also has the time and space to spend on this program. But that's one of our first lessons. The second thing that we learned is that the mindset of the policy fellow is important. We have, by coincidence, noticed that the age group of our fellows are typically within late 30s to sometimes early 50s. Again, this is not a science. This is just data that we have been seeing. And they have mostly have had some experience with international exchange already prior to this program. And so they are familiar with the opportunity that a program like this can potentially bring to their work. Some of them may have had experience prior to engaging with social investors, and some may have not, but they all come with a openness to want to work with social investors. So I didn't mention this before, but we typically ask for recommendations from former policy fellows, but also Avpn members about the kinds of policy makers that they think are suitable for this program. So that will help us also identify somebody with the right mindset. And then I want to talk very briefly about this last point Sonoda Sensei mentioned about what are we monitoring them for. And this relates to your second question about what happens when there is a shift in policy or when they change their portfolios. The reality is that government programs and how they progress can sometimes be very hard to predict. And so we typically look at two things. Firstly, we want to make sure that we are able to identify a longer runway for the kinds of programs they want to work with in this policy lab. If a policy fellow gives us an idea about a policy program which only has a 3 or 6 month time frame, it is highly unlikely that we are not going to see a lot of development because it is either already almost complete or there is very little government commitment to ensure that this program continues. Secondly, we are also realistic that an individual may change his or her portfolio quickly. So we have learned in the later years of the lab that it is important for us to know who are the team members that are working with this policy fellow. And when a policy fellow moves on, we still have the opportunity to work with that policy fellow's team as and when that person transitions. But again, that is not a perfect hedge. There will always be a risk that the policy regime or the government's agenda significantly shifts what the agency may want to pay attention to, even if they have the intent to do so when they first start the program. So that is a risk that we do have to be prepared for.
Thank you, Patian. So maybe let's go back to Sonoda-san so that you could repeat the questions to Juan and Sunit so that they could answer easily.
Okay. Okay, I repeat my question. Two questions again. The one question is whether they had any a clear idea about the concrete and specific models that they would like to utilize or apply to the in case of community-based tourism in Vietnam and Thailand, and if in that case, what sort of attempts they made to modify to the kind of concrete cases. And the second question is that how they try to sustain or even develop the kind of capacity of the community leaders who might be the core agencies of promotion of a community-based tourism. That's my two questions.
Okay, thank you. So one asked me to respond first. So as one mentioned, that we actually came up with some kind of a guidelines for the two countries, and that guidelines kind of developed from some of the experience we had in Thailand and also in Vietnam about developing these community-based tourism into a marketable kind of service at the community level. So it's like I think 7 to 10 kind of step process. So there's actually a kind of model that, at least in Thailand, we are working closely with the Thai government to implement in supporting different communities to get ready for. I mean, it's not very difficult to get community to get into tourism, but the problem is once they get into tourism, there's so many problems without preparation. So those are some process, and globally there is actually a kind of a global model on global sustainable tourism recognized by the UN and few other kind of agencies. So we try to kind of replicate and simplify that kind of process into a level where community can manage. And from this angle, one of the things that we try to work and learn from Toyota Foundation helps, and also Avpn to the help of Ken Ito, is how many Japanese town, from a very famous one like Shirakawako to a smaller ones, they have something called area-based management. So it's not just about community tourism that it's like one house at a time, but there's a common rules and community issue regulations to plan and to work and to govern. So it's more like a governance issue, like community-based tourism governance that is done by the community in partnership with the local authority. I think those are something we really excited to learn from. So it's actually like a three-way learning, Thai, Vietnam, and also Japanese. And the second, so there's some models we are built on, and I think we can, especially after the COVID, I think we were talking with one that maybe different countries in Southeast Asia would require similar needs. So maybe in developing this capacity of the community, the leaders, and even local government to be prepared for this, I think maybe regional approach is useful. Second question on how to develop capacity of the leadership within the communities. We also don't have all the answer. Many communities in Thailand, the leaders are very old. And by the time we engage with them, maybe the next cycle, they went to heaven. So it's quite tough sometimes, but we are learning actually similar to what Patian said. Some of the leaders, especially from the community that are engaging well with us, are in the younger aspirational years. So they might be like a second or third kind of rank or within the community. Especially we are seeing the working with in collaboration between the kind of mid-level community leader and the younger generation, even those in the like 20s or early 30s in how to connect this whole process to the market, to the online, using different social media, like from Instagram to TikTok. So to work together, and we see like some successful model. This kind of intergenerational collaboration within the communities are very useful, and it many times is ignited by this external facilitation, coming from the outside, especially if you have like this regional collaboration process, then the young people get super excited, and the mid-level people feel more open to try new things, and then they see, oh, there are examples from this country, that country, why not doing it? Especially if they are like sometimes as example are shared by the same Hill tribes, ethnic groups. In Thailand and Vietnam, we have very similar ethnic groups as well. So thank you. I'm not sure one have anything to add.
Yeah, I have a few things. In our project in CSIP, we try to we consider social entrepreneurship is an approach for us to to help the underdeveloped community to gain, to empower them, and also to have more income for the poor. So so that's why in the project we are more like very selected in select the community leader and the CBT leader is the project as a very beginning of the project. So very lucky that maybe the CBT industry in Vietnam is not like long history like Thailand, so we still have a young generation. We still have a chance to work with a very passionate and enthusiastic leader for the tourism. Yeah, but so the problem for them that because they have a very limited opportunity to go abroad, to learn from others, like practitioner like them in Thailand, in Japan, or anywhere. They are just stay in the village. So in this project, when we bring the people out of the village and to explore about what happening in different location, different country, is a real open eye for them. So they're getting very enthusiastic and very engaged in all the chain and in our capacity building program, our training, our guideline development, and also of these things. They are very excited for that. So as Sunit mentioned about the room, like the concrete or the model, I think we don't have very like one size fit all model. The thing is very much switching from what we call like very like individual by household by small base tourist, the accommodation, like the support, and with another extreme is promoted by the big organization like EU and other, is a very comprehensive community development tourism area. And because of the social objective, so most of this project is a fail in enriching the market. So our project is try to balance and to have to identify in the between the very commercialized and very too much like the no markets tourism. So we are very lucky that we somehow can come up with some good suggestion for the local community and also for our practitioner in the community, the ways they can still continue to achieve the goal of the community development and also commercial, to when you see the market and community development is meeting meet each other. Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you for the answers. So okay, so now we cannot expect a lot of questions from the audience actually. So Sono-san, if you have additional question or comments, please let us know. And and all other speakers, if you have questions each other, please let us know later. So Sonoda-san, do you have any questions?
No, as of now,
Right.
I'm now preparing for the final word.
Okay, right. How about others? Ito-san, do you have questions to?
I have some interesting experience at how we can engage the government officials. As we are all doing something innovative and not really well defined by existing programs. So let's say that social investment is still a new concept. And when we first went to Ministry of Economy and Trade and Industry, they said that, well, social investment, maybe this is, you're talking about some matters under FSA, the Kinyucho. Well, it's not our like how to say policy territory to intervene. And when we go to the people at the FSA, the people say that, oh, you're doing international exchange, you should go to MOFA, not us. And well, when we go to these people, say that, well, that could be, you know, the territory of the JICA people. So, you know, this kind of, you know, the things always happens because we are pioneering the new field of policy formulation. So something we are doing is that try to engage all different ministries as much as possible to see that who respond. So for example, interesting thing is that we are doing the other program on the gender investment, and we are approaching all the METI and JICA, all people. But interestingly, the people who joined in the program was from the like a post-conflict, like a recovery, you know, type of programs that the people doing, you know, that type of the program at JICA. We never imagined that, you know, gender investment and post-conflict recovery is closely related, but to them, this is very relevant, and they are willing to learn and exchange all the insights. So, you know, all different like the potential innovation, the combination happening always outside of our imagination. So that is the how we should be prepared and how we should plan something unplanned.
That's very interesting. And Patian, do you have any comments?
Yes, I'm very glad that Ito-san raised this because I want to tie this back to our earlier comment and also the question from Sonoda Sensei about how do we find the right kind of people and talent. And one of the observable skills that I have seen from the team members that have done this well is that they are lateral thinkers. They do not only look at subject matter technically, they think about the problem and also the situation that our stakeholder is in a very networked ecosystem way. And that makes a very big difference because then you don't see social investment as social or investment or something else, but you are able to see the implications of the work that we do in different areas so that regardless of which part of government you may be speaking to, you are able to bring that kind of relevance to that part of government. And that's not something that is easily learned from books. And so where possible, we try to make sure that our team members have the opportunity to practice this and guide some of the younger team members to start to develop this ability over time.
Right, thank you, Patian. So actually we are running out of time, so let's take maybe only one questions later. So, but if you have any questions right now, please let us know. Otherwise, I'd like to ask you questions. Is that okay for you? Okay. Actually, there are some questions, and the one thing is maybe Patian and Sonoda Sensei already raised that. What kind of efforts are you making to develop the capacity within your organization, not external players that, but within your organization? How do you find those potential leaders or potential connectors or facilitators, and how to what kind of training, if you have, what do you think, what kind of experience they need? As the Patian mentions that some senior officials would already have experience of international exchange or communication skills, maybe let's call it like soft skills, But if you find some younger generations who might have a potential skills or potential to be a facilitator, how do you nurture them in your organization especially? So if you have any training program, or if you have stories or experience in your organization, please share your comments, or please share your experience. Maybe could we ask you Avpn team and the CSIP and Change Fusion, because all of you are sort of intermediaries who are connecting all of the stakeholders. So you are the connectors and you are the facilitators. But how could we find the persons like you more? Maybe could we start from the One and the Sunit team? If you have any opinions or comments, what kind of skills do we need and how to develop those skills?
Sunit, can you go first?
Okay. I don't know really. There's so many things, but I kind of agree with many of you. I kind of learned that everyone is kind of speaking about maybe same two things now in this conference we are having. First is prepare for the unexpected and kind of be happy with it, right? Or how to use it to your advantage, right? So that's actually a very old skill, you know, in a way. It might be new for more modern business or some fixed thing, but you know, like learning to you know, like some older Japanese or Chinese texts, you know, like from thousands of years old, you know, like the Art of War, even like the Tao Te Ching or something, always talk about this, you know, like you have to look at the weather, you have to look at the conditions and see how things change, and you cannot fully plan everything, but you actually plan for change itself, right? So I think that's a good mindset to think about. And I think as Asian people, yellow people, we are quite good with this kind of thing for sometimes. And the second thing I find interesting would be, you know, how to imagine changes. Like at the end, we are talking about the impact, right? But impact sounds very measurable, very concrete, right? Which is a good thing. That's why we have social return on investment and stuff. But also change is a movement, right? So again, some older thinking, change can be imagined as like a flow of a stream to a river to the sea, right? And many times when we think of change, we try to like go and run against the very strong current of something, you know, like capitalism or something, which can be quite difficult. But as you all mentioned, you know, as Pasian just mentioned, how to lateral thinking, networking, and thinking is very similar to this idea about like how to do something they call upstreaming. You know, from this kind of old thinking, you have like if you want to create a riverway, you have different choices whether you want to do like you know, like downstream, midstream, or upstream, right? And I think a lot of the work, as Ken mentioned, we are pioneering something, so no one quite understand it, but also therefore they don't go against it too much, you know. So thinking about how to work on an upstream way on you know, like early parts of the streams, how to bring different streams together, form a new channel, new direction, create different conditions for the stream to run in momentum. So I think that is very kind of upstreaming thinking, and that's a kind of a skill that we all learn, and it's not new, it's very old, and I think that's something nice to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunit.
Yes, so I think that Sunoda-san asked a question about how organization like us, like CSIP, to build our capacity ourselves in terms of, so it can better facilitate the collaboration and partnership with different stakeholders. I think it's not easy as a big number one, because the people in general, people all accept that, of course, yes, we need to collaborate, we need to identify the stakeholder and work together, but as you also can see that because of without clearly mapping the role of different stakeholders, it's quite easy for us to lose our target and our focus. Who are our primary stakeholders for any particular work? So maybe for the Avpn in the lab project, the target group could be like young policymaker, right? But for us in this tourism project, our focus is more like a practitioner as a community level. So we build all the stakeholders around them. Let's see how we want to see how we can nurture, we can have our target group is our practitioner do better work, and so they can provide more, they can do better, and of course, so they can gain more economic and social return. Yeah, so for that, from that perspective, we think that our staff, our team will also identify whole stakeholder, mapping them, and also identify who are our primary stakeholders. And then through that, we have some good justification about who doing what and when. So we had a kind of planning in the project planning about who we need and how we can engage them. So gradually, so we, of course, through our network, we select the right partner for us to run the project. But of course, we first running started with our with people we know first. So yeah, it's a very practical, like the snowballs, because some methods, because we don't know when it's a project will go. So we just engage people in our journey. But from from the very beginning, we know what we want to achieve and who we should engage and when. So that is our that's the way how it works.
Thank you, Wan. So Patian and Ito-san, do you have a comment on that issue?
Just a very quick point to raise, which I think the practical reality also is that organizations that are trying to do this work, many of them are small to medium sized. Many of them are also struggling to have resources. And as a result, it is not easy to find the right talent that will be able to do this work also. So I think we've become very smart at looking at alternative ways to make sure we can find the right person to join our organizations. And one way is from Avpn's perspective, for example, is that we are very welcoming of people who are crossing sectors. So they may not previously have had extensive nonprofit experience or even social investment experience, but they openly are looking for opportunities to learn laterally and extend their work experience across different sectors. That is one way for us to make sure that we have people that have the right competency. The second thing is internally, we also are very open to inviting people from different team members from different disciplines to join this project. So that, for example, we don't only have policy analysts that are doing policy lab. We also have other members in Avpn who may be in the markets, who may be in product development, who can also join this facilitation and project design process with us. Those internal opportunities to learn will also be very helpful for our team members.
I think there's interesting similarities among the people who are working with, no matter they are from policy sector or the entrepreneurs or investors. And that is the entrepreneurship and imagination. So I think Japanese government officials used to be known for its entrepreneurship, especially in the maybe 70s, 80s, and they envision the nation or envision the world like order to actively engage in the process to build the system. And such such personality or the behavior is commonly seen in the different sectors actually. So entrepreneurs, of course, and even the people at the corporate, some of the corporate leaders are very visionary, and they have leadership to bring people's imagination towards the optimistic future to be realized. I think that's a very key element of the people's capability.
Thank you all. It's very interesting and fascinating answers. And Patian, you have additional comment?
No, I'm just applauding.
Okay, right. So it's very interesting that we are always encouraging the unexpectedness, like today's session, that there's a technical problems but we always are facing those challenges. It's just not the exceptional things that it's kind of installed from the beginning. So we need to just be prepared for that. Any things that not imagined beforehand it's coming during any project. So we need some mindset or maybe some imagination that that kind of situation is coming. How much you prepared, or how much you planned deeply. So I wish I could continue this discussion more, but we need to close the discussion. So before closing that, I would like to have a final comment from Sonoda-san, and maybe in 30 seconds or 1 minute. So please, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just following the kind of Ito-san's episode, I can imagine what happened later. If Ito-san's project will be very good, then the bureaucrat said, we originally thought that it's part of our territory. So, if time goes by, the attitude might be very different because the visibility of the project is so different. When you start from scratch, if you're doing something completely new, nobody try to believe. But once you can see your product, everyone can be easily be convinced by your efforts. I think this shows the kind of nature of so-called social enterprises, which try to connect many factors. On one hand, you have to be very idealistic. You have to be visionary. You have to be very visionary. You have to have a very good idea what to be done. But if you go too extreme, feasibility will be spoiled. So you have to consider about the kind of very practical conditions. But you are stuck in such a condition, you cannot do something new. So almost all types of social enterprises are sandwiched by different conditions, which creates a lot of contradictions. But this contradiction is the drive for doing something very new. As everyone mentioned, whenever social entrepreneurs or social innovators have been trying to do something new, they will be faced with so-called, the necessity of management of the unexpected. Of course, if you have a super great, a strategy, you might not face such unexpected thing. But in reality, you might feel a variety of unexpected things. But the issue is, in order to buffer such unexpected thing, you can help relying on people rather than logics or some design. So that's the kind of beginning or alpha and also at the omega of the management of social enterprises. And today's two cases clearly show the importance of cultivating person who might start something very new and continues to do the kind of things. Even though two cases show are targeted to different ideas, but what they are trying to do, for me, seem to be very similar. We can see some isomorphism among two groups which are doing very different. And I'm very happy to hear that the hidden message that the four presenters conveyed is the importance of cultivating person. I'd like to get the lesson of this message. I'd like to get this message to the university to which in which I'm teaching people, students to be working for social sectors. Thank you for your interesting speeches.
Thank you, Sonoda-san. So as I said, that we need to be very optimistic because some challenges coming up, and we need to sort of enjoy that kind of challenges we face during we do work on any issues. So finally, we are ending the discussion. So the full recording of this video will be on the Toyota Foundation YouTube channel later, and also the digest short version, maybe 10 to 15 minutes version will be on the YouTube channel as well. So we do appreciate and welcome your comments or any feedback on YouTube. So thank you again for watching and joining our conversation. And I would also like to thank the interpreters for their great interpretations. And last but not least, I appreciate the speakers, all of you, for having a lot of time for today. So, and we are looking forward to meeting you at the next opportunity, hopefully in person in Singapore or in Hanoi or in Bangkok in the future. So until then, bye for now. Thank you for joining. Goodbye.